that.
Well, it is
That's
7
everyone, so.
o'clock. We've got everybody here, so we'll go ahead and call to order. And we'll do the roll call, and since Deb, since this is the first time you're with us in person, let's just go around a quick introduction so you put names to faces.
That would be great, and I promise not to remember.
Not required or expected. I'll start off. My name is Bob Woodruff, and I'm the current chair, and tonight we'll be doing elections, but I've been on the commission a year and a half, so kind of my time on the commission, there's been a lot of changes. And then the other thing which we've all seen just in the past 6 months, more quasi judicial decisions that we've had to make, I think than they've had to make in several years. We've made 2 in the past 6 months. So it's an interesting time to be on the commission.
Thank you.
So,
I'm Brian Angstrom, hello. I have been on this commission for 8 months or so, and I've lived in Newburgh for a little over a year, so I'm still listening.
So I'm Karen Tozer, and this is my first commission meeting. I've been in Newburgh since July of 2022. So gosh, it'll almost be 3 years soon. That's scary. I moved up from Los Angeles to the Friendsview Retirement Community. I live out in Springbrook. And I worked for 25 years for the city of Los Angeles in a variety of capacities. And just wanted to get involved. And I just find Newburgh so charming that I thought this commission would help me kind of do that. So, yes.
thank you.
Hello, I'm Britta Mansfield from the Student Community. I live here in Newburgh. I love history. I've been involved in the Historical Society here, and some other nonprofit boards. I'm just really love this community and thought I could get in here.
I totally forgot you were on the board. I thought, I was like, oh, she must have invited her. Because I had
Oh, yes, no, she's on this board. Yeah, I've been on this commission for about a year, I think.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. Well, I'm Robin Wheatley, one of the city councilors here in Newburgh. I'm just an ex officio, so I just, you guys need anything from me as a councilor, I'm here.
Important connection point.
Yes.
Yes, I'm Rachel Thomas, I'm the city recorder here, so I do public meetings and public records and elections and everything in between. But I am the staff liaison to the Historic Preservation Commission, usually along with my partner Clay, but Clay is leaving the city, tomorrow is his last day.
And you blew us off, I don't understand.
No, but he actually didn't come because he's not feeling well, so otherwise you guys said, don't worry about it, I got it. He's like, I don't have much to add and I don't feel very well. I'm like, stay home, you need to be healthy for your new job. Clay is leaving us to become the superintendent of the Parks District. We are very excited for the Parks District and very sad for the city because he is an asset. So in the next little while, we'll be figuring out who from the planning department will be joining us to assist, because it makes sense for the type of work we do in here to have a subject expert in that. I am not an expert in the planning side, I'm a historian. So before I started with the city, that's what I did. But I am here as your support, and I will make sure that you guys don't have to worry about any public meeting law things, because I take care of them.
I'm Deb Burkle. I was transferred here about 15 years ago. I am now retired.
Yes.
So happy about that. And I do live in Newburgh. I love the community. I have family here now, and I also am a student of history. And I love reading history books and listening to history podcasts and listening to just all kinds of things, from architecture to stories and people who made places in world. And so I'm looking forward to the evolution of this group because it has evolved. This is my second 3-year term. I just started. And I'm really excited about the trends in leadership and the actions that are being taken. And yeah, it's glad to be able to serve with all of you.
Right on. So just out of curiosity, so did you move up here to move into Friendsview? How did you get tied into Friendsview?
So I grew up in Southern California, but I came up and went to Lewiston Park College many,
Okay.
historically. A historical period of time, and I stayed in the Portland area for 20 years, and then my job took me back to Southern California.
Okay,
But I knew that I would eventually come back to Oregon, and so when I started looking for a place, I had met my father in a continuing care facility in California. I was very impressed with how they work. It was also a not-for-profit, religious-based, and so I started looking around, kind of the greater Portland area, and just kept coming back here to Friendsview and to Newburgh. That's how I got here, and I have not regretted a move once. I mean, I miss friends and I miss things, but, it's only a 2-hour thing.
yes. No, I asked just, it's a big leap from LA to.
Yes, it is. Yes,
And,
from the big pond to the little one, yes.
Friendsview, of course, any continuing care is kind of a dream that it's so wonderful to get into.
Yes,
And then here historically, it's just, it has a connection to Friends Church.
and George Fox,
Yeah.
I mean, it just celebrated its 60th year, Friendsview, so. I feel very fortunate to get in on the ground floor, so to speak, out here at the new
Yeah.
place, and I have wonderful neighbors, and a number of whom have lived in Newburgh for, 30, 40 years, so it's kind of like just walking right into an established community. So,
Thanks
thank
for
you.
sharing. Yeah. Do we have any public comments?
You do not.
No. And yeah, in the relatively brief time, I don't think we've had any public comments yet. And I'm sure something will come up someday when folks will, and we welcome that, but just kind of give you lay of the land. We've not been a commission that is kind of, I think, very well known in the community, what we do, how we do it, which is one of the reasons,
That was one thing that made it appealing to me. I've been through the political arena. I don't need a lot of that anymore.
And, to kind of bring you up and just kind of share and remind all of us, we do have that, like I said, we do have a quasi judicial role where there are some things designated historic properties in town that want to make changes or alterations. We do have a role in approving or denying those. Doesn't happen very often, but it has happened, like I said, much more frequently in the past 6 months than it has even in the past, sounds like 3-4 years. And as the town grows and builds and develops, I think there's going to be more pressure and we get more of that sort of thing. And eventually one of those will be something that starts comments and, that's a healthy thing, not something to be leery of. So our first order of business tonight is that time of year again to vote on our chair and vice chair. Probably the simplest way to start it off, is there anybody who just is absolutely not interested in being chair or vice chair?
Ask if you would like to continue in that role.
That often makes it simpler, just whittling down what our pool of candidates is. Are you interested in being chair?
I'll take it over if you don't want it, but I think I'm the current vice chair, so I'm happy to keep everything the same.
If you want.
Move in the second to keep it the same. All right, that works for me.
So we've got a motion and a second. It doesn't feel like there's any need for discussion. So then we'll take a vote. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Oh, you too.
That was what I didn't think to ask you beforehand, if you had a burning desire to be chair, but it didn't feel that way.
I'm always happy to step into that role when I have no burning desire to do it.
And then right back at you, like I would have been perfectly happy to step aside, but perfectly happy to, so.
Nope, I'm
All right.
super excited. This is great.
Karen, just for your knowledge, if in case this is different from other places you've served, our student commissioners on boards here have a full vote unless it's legally not allowed. So Brian gets to participate.
I think it's fabulous,
Right.
and then there is a student commissioner, and I noticed that a lot of your commissions have students, and I think that's just a wonderful, wonderful.
We're trying to get them on all.
Well, yes.
No voice for it.
You're not in high school yet, you can't.
And that's been a big push last year, 2 years, to have a student commissioner on every, it's available for every commission, just haven't been able to recruit.
We haven't been able to recruit.
I think it's just enlightening.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Lots of
I feel-
students this last round stuff, right?
Yeah, we have 4 student commissioners now, and last year we only had 2, so we've doubled it. That's a lot of time, I spent a lot of time going to our high schools and
Yeah.
talking to them, so.
No, I think it's great, and it's a very Newburgh thing, you know, I take pride when I was on the school board. And when I was on the school, we actually had, 1 year, we had 3 student representatives on the school board. We actually changed our policy because we had so many, and so it's a very Newburgh thing to include young people. So I'm really glad to see that ability taken off. All right, that was our new business. Continued business, our 5-year work plan. We have an
Yeah,
update for
So
us.
let me pull that up. Basically, what I've done is written, no, it's not there. Is that it? That's our grant, which we're gonna discuss about. 5-year work plan is right here. So we have, it's a full spreadsheet.
It makes me so happy.
I hear the excitement here. I have not charted it out with the years here, but, the main part is looking at the goals, at the descriptions of what we're working on. So this is exactly what we've discussed. Basically apply for the CLG grant this year for the historic resources inventory. That is due at the end of this month, so at your motion at your last meeting, we brought it to city council, they approved submitting that application. And it is nearly ready to go, so we'll go over that in just a moment. We then will take what we learned from that study and identify specific resources that need support and what kind of support they need. Then we're looking at connecting with property owners and creating buy-in for historic preservation. So that's one thing you all will be working on, is going around, getting to know business owners, talking to them about historic preservation and what that can look like in the city, and helping create buy-in and connect them to resources. So we can come up with talking points and help you all with that. But that should be a really fun thing to do, actually.
Rachel, excuse me, will you be sharing these documents with us?
Yes, this was intended to be linked with the agenda, and I realized that it was not linked to the
Okay.
agenda, so, just today, working on the new website, and that's taken my entire
No
day,
worries,
so.
I was hoping that I didn't.
Yes, we can definitely share this document with you, I'll email it out again about this, after this. Then we are going, so every 2 years, we are eligible for a certified local government grant, which is pretty much a guaranteed grant. And so we base a lot of the work plan around a cycle of applying for it every 2 years. So in 2 years from now, we'll apply again to hire someone to explore a historic downtown designation. The idea behind this is they won't just come in and do the designation and do all the paperwork for us, but they might help us with that. They're going to do a lot of the public outreach and help us talk to the community about this. So what it looks like, why we might want to do it, what it means for their businesses, and homes. So that's what we would do the second round. Do you have a question?
Well, okay, you wanted the commissioners to go around and interview.
Commissioners will be getting to know business owners and just talking to them, so creating buy-in and information. The second grant will pay for a contractor that we'll hire to do more in-depth version of this.
Oh, okay.
Surveys and meetings and all sorts of information.
Kind of I envisioned that outreach before the grant, kind of us doing our best to prime them up and get the conversation started, so it's not a shock when
Right.
When we start discussing.
when the consultant comes in and it seems more
Yeah.
official.
Yeah, I have a question about that stuff. I don't wanna like open a huge can of worms here, Robin, don't hate me for this. This sounds like potential overlap with some organizations in the community, like the Historical Society and Downtown Coalition come to mind. have we collectively thought about that? Have you, Rachel, thought about that?
Yes, I was gonna ask you about stuff
I'm
tonight,
like kind of doing, super happy to do this work and would love if it's coming straight from the city, straight from us as commissioners, and I don't know what to.
Exactly. So part of what we're looking at with the historic downtown designation, that is a legal designation for planning
Yes.
purposes. It's a zone overlay, which helps us preserve the historic character of this area. So if infill buildings were built, they would have to match the zoning and things like that. So if you remember the trainings we did last year, and if you wanna watch those on some of our meetings from last year, we had folks from Oregon Heritage, from Oregon Parks and Recreation, who did some great trainings on historic preservation at some of our meetings, so.
If you really want to nerd out, all of our.
They're-
meetings are-
Well, I did read a lot of the former minutes, so.
Those are,
And are videos of the meetings
yeah,
available?
the videos of the meetings
Videos
are all on our website and on the Facebook page, or not Facebook, YouTube page.
Yeah.
Forgetting which social media. So the idea here, NDC and other organizations in town are doing a lot of historic preservation. What we can do is the legal side of it. And also there are some grants that are only available through like the Certified Local Government Grant. So when we work with those organizations, we can get this work done now. And we're gonna go over this first grant, in the scope of work for this first grant, it involves working with those other stakeholders.
Okay, great, that's
So
perfect.
wrapping them all in there, getting their input. The same, we would involve them all, because it makes sense to work with our local nonprofits and other organizations that are doing this. It helps that we have a member of the Historical Society on the board right now. We're gonna call that.
Yes.
And past member. I'm still a member, I'm not a board member anymore.
And I have not talked to the Downtown Coalition directly about this, but I met with Kate Gabor, who's newly, I met with her about the Old Fashioned Festival last week, and I said, hey, different topic, we need to sit down and talk about NC, and they're working with us, so that's part of that outreach that's like.
So while NDC can provide some really unique opportunities for businesses, and they do it through historic preservation as well, that's a major focus of their program. But we can provide the government support, and a lot of the time, to accomplish those goals and get the grants, we have to work together. So they have to work with us, we have to work with them. So we're going to have to work carefully to have that partnership as we go forward on these things. There's lots of things we could do independently, but it makes more sense to work in collaboration with the other organizations doing this work. And they are aware that we're looking into a lot of these things too.
As long as they're aware, there's a lot of conversations right now about overlap of duties, and I don't wanna add another layer to that if it's not.
The idea is something congruent and complementary, right? Not taking over, not doing something that they're already doing, but doing something that complements it.
Right.
So after we've explored that historic downtown, we'll either, that may become a thing that we do for sure as we pursue that designation, dependent on the results of that study. If the people in our downtown say absolutely not, then we won't pursue it, unless you guys force me to. I don't think that would be a good decision. We also will use what we've learned in these first two studies to develop ideas for a historic restoration program. Now, there's all sorts of cool programs out there. For example, a great one I heard about recently was a city got a grant. They hired an architect to do facade drawings for different buildings in the downtown, help them renovate their facades. And then different businesses were able to come and use that service. So they paid for the architect to do that work, and all of these different businesses were able to get facade renderings, so they were able to do restorations. So there's programs like that. There might be a window grant or different things that we could think about depending on what's needed. We can help get specific buildings looked at and worked on. So what we'll take is what we've gleaned from the first two studies that we do and all the research in the first couple of years here to drive what that program becomes. So that's what this step is.
Kind of similar to that, Clay had sent us some information about basically the on-call engineering
Yes.
services, yeah.
So basically, you can set something up like that. You can-
That would be wonderful.
Yeah, but we need to know what we need here, right?
Yeah.
So that's gonna be really beneficial. After we've done, so we may or may not do the historic downtown designation, depending on what we learn. And then the third grant would be to support whatever historic restoration program we've developed. So once we're working on that all year, we'll come up with a plan and an idea, and then we'll build a grant application in order to support that. The one thing to keep in mind as we go forward with that is that these grants cannot be used for signage. It's the only thing they can't be used for, so we can't use it for interpretive panels or signage. It was a weird problem when they developed the grant program. They have talked about the fact that they kind of want to take away that restriction, but it has not gone yet.
There's so many other opportunities for grant funding for signage. Like
Exactly.
most tourism agencies do that, there's other SHPO grants for that, so to an extent it makes sense. Because
Yeah.
there's so many nonprofits and resources for that, and other partnership.
One thing we can also keep in mind is we are not tied to only these grants, there are other opportunities, but you'll have to keep in mind limited staffing, so.
I always remember we did discuss there is kind of a loophole to that sign restriction. One of my personal dreams is a awards program. And you can use money from this for awards. And if the award is shaped like a sign, that's permissible.
Plaque that goes on a building. Yeah, sure.
And, you know, like I said, I'm very mindful, I'm just one person and staff, all those caveats, it's one of my dreams is to have an award program, recognize people who are doing good preservation work in town. That's why I always remember that little.
And when we did our goal setting session last year, we really dreamed about it, and the awards program was one of the things that came up, awarding good restoration of homes and businesses. Now, the work that you'll do doing outreach and connecting, creating buy-in throughout the community is one of the ways you can build a program like that. Unless people are actually starting to get interested in historic preservation, we won't have any awards to give out. So that's a benefit there. We have one goal in here is NDC's support directly, so supporting them in applications for Main Street grants. Because there are several grant programs that have to go through their organization because they are Newburgh's official Main Street organization. But if they have city support, it will help a lot. And those are things like the Diamond in the Rough grant, which helped take a building that's really struggling and refurbish it. There's facade restorations like were used for a Chapters bookstore when it was renovated. There's theater grants, there's all sorts of different things that can be used. So, but those are through the Newburgh Downtown Coalition, so we'll need to work with them actively. And then the last thing is another good project for commission, which is a traditions inventory. One of the things we discussed is some of the history that we value so much is not a place, it's an activity that's occurring. So, and the big example is the Old Fashioned Festival. That's been around in many capacities for a very, very long time. We're very near to 100 years now, aren't we? Over now.
Over 100 years in one form or another. Originally, the Berrien Festival to promote the berry industry. Then it was Farmeroo to kind of broaden it to just farming in general. Then they went back to the Berrien name. Then it was Old Fashioned Days. So a lot of people still call it that. And then they changed it in the 90s to the Old Fashioned Festival that it is today.
And so we have some traditions in our town that have become very important to the culture here. And so creating a traditions inventory is this board recognizing those things that we hold sacred and very important, and we see them as having historic value to the culture of this community. And so this will be something we can work on during our meetings, and you guys can work on as commissioners throughout the next 6 years. Is gathering and creating an index of those. That means that when we're making decisions, we can bring this to council for approval when it's finished. And when decisions are made, whether or not to support different events, we can think about the impact on those historic traditions. So that's a really exciting way to think about history that's not place-based and physical, because there's other histories to protect, right? So that's the basic plan for the next 5 to 6 years. And so what staff is asking for tonight is you to discuss this, make any changes you would like, and then we'd like a motion to bring this to city council for final approval. hopefully we have a chair coming to city council to help present it.
Yes,
Okay, that would, because that tends to be received really well in the chair.
just give me the date. The only possibility, because you meet on Mondays, if it's the second Monday of the month,
Which it won't be, it's first and third,
well,
so.
then there's a conflict.
Yeah, so.
Second Monday of the month is the old fashioned festival.
There we go. So that's what we're looking at, so that's my presentation on our 5-year plan. Go ahead and lead.
I think this is excellent. It kind of sums up what we've been working
Yeah.
on, puts it into a format that draws oohs and ahs from the commission members. Yeah, the only thing that just made me think about heritage traditions, the community festival is not as old, but is been going on 18 years and is a big, I would add that on one of our cultural traditions.
I think we talked also about potential designation of trees or like historical plantings that may have been here for some period of time. I'm not aware of what those are, but certainly somebody might be able to inventory and let us know. We have that information.
Okay, so one thing that could be done is, you can do the inventories, but also just creating criteria for what's considered historic. Makes it a lot easier when someone says, well, this is a historic XYZ, we can say, okay, well, is it, did something occur at that location, is it special for some reason, we have our criteria. So that could be a potential goal we can add into this, we can always just add it, or we can build in inventory, historic inventories, and we can make this broader and then add in heritage and natural environment, things like that.
Yeah, you know, I think about, I think there's on the city website, there's a map of camellias that Brian Stewart had put together. And I had a booth at the community festival last year, and so many people, every year in the newspaper, it says, you know, in town, there's camellias that were planted in the 40s. And so many people came in and asked, where can I go see them? And we don't really, I don't know of a map that really can show folks where to go to see these really old camellias. So, you know, I kind of talked with Brian, just as a concept, like, it'd be really cool to take that map that he created and really dial in some specifics about some of the older camellias in town.
So going back to, I think, the third bullet or the third task, the outreach. I wonder if in the description, we should include not just property owners, I can't even read it, property owners that will create buy-in. Shouldn't we maybe call out appropriate organizations such as Oregon Historical Society and the Downtown Coalition, you know, so that it doesn't look like we're kind of just taking the ball and running alone.
So would you like this property owners and stakeholders to create, Brian? Or do you want to call it specifically of those stakeholders?
Well, I don't want to limit it. I'm just wondering if maybe we see such as.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Okay, so that would be Newburgh Area Historical Society, the Yamhill County Historical Society, Newburgh Downtown.
And I don't think we need to add it because it can get kind of wordy, but just a reminder, like reaching out to businesses for support and interest. And the business owner is not always the property owner.
Exactly.
So they might not have the decision,
How
but
about
they carry some weight and express interest.
with business and property, yeah, business and property. owners.
Businesses, property owners, yes, and stakeholders such as to create, yeah. And this can involve definitely more stakeholders or more folks, because that,
Such as, but not limited to.
yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's good.
Great, all right, so that one we want to increase. Back to the traditions inventories idea, it sounds like there was interest in more inventories rather than just the traditions, which I think we have capacity for. Robin, I saw you starting to wave at Bob with that too.
Back to the tree thing, the only concern,
It's in the past, when we've had to cut down an older tree, I would be concerned if that would impede the city from doing necessary work. That's the only concern. If we did designate it, we wouldn't be able to remove it if we needed to.
Yeah, I think if we have an inventory, we get to that part of the process, anything that's diseased, obviously,
Okay.
but you can say, well, we can propagate a limb from that to keep the history alive. So-
And like we used the stump, did you guys see the
Yeah.
bench? So we have the redwood lives on.
Yeah.
But okay, I would wanna make sure that we
Sure.
can still be
That
able to
makes
do.
sense.
So, and one thing to keep in mind with this is that currently there's nothing in our code that would protect these resources, that even if we had inventory for the heritage, for traditions, or for a natural resource, our code applies to like built environment at this point. So there's nothing in there at this point that would really affect it, but yes, it could potentially, someone could say, well, it's on your own historic resources list. So yes, I think that's something to approach with caution, and I'd agree with what you say there.
No, 100%, you know, I think it's a healthy conversation to have at the start, that, you know, to get folks thinking about the, you know, the native plants and things that as historical parts of the fabric of our town. You know, personally, I would never vote for something that prevented the city or a homeowner or property owner from dealing with a disease
Yeah.
or something that would do damage. But, you know, I think there could be some merit, and it would be, we'd have to be careful how we proposed it and have to have the city ever implemented it, but something that designated a historic tree, and a property owner would be limited and just be able to cut it down because I want more sun in my sun. You know, that would be something a property owner I would envision them being a part of that historic designation. It wouldn't be something I would envision us coming in and saying, hey, you now have a historic tree you can't touch. I would picture us facilitating, someone says, hey, I got this really special tree and it's tied into, you know, it was here when the house was built in 1910, and I want to have it designated as a historic tree to help protect it. I could envision the city having a mechanism to support and facilitate that protection that the property owner chose for their own.
And so that's the kind of code, so one thing in Oregon, you can't just designate a historic property without property owner's consent. So they would be involved in it, which is a really good thing.
Yeah.
We could, when investigating and looking into these ideas, consider making recommendations to council that they consider code amendments or changes that would involve them. But that would, like I said, that would be something, so this board gets to make a recommendation to council, and like council would make the decision. Creating the inventories could be really interesting, just to be aware of what's here.
Yeah.
Or for the case that something does get cut down, like it's worth having that history recorded. It's not about preserving, to me, history is not just about preserving the objects, and that's even like a lesser piece, frankly, to preserving the stories, so we can learn from them. If you have an object without a story, there's not much.
Exactly.
And if you have a story but no object, I think you can still learn from that. And I think that goes for trees. I also think especially for trees, there's statewide programs already. There's the Oregon Heritage Tree Program. I don't know how active that program is at the state level, but I know we have at least one of those here in Newburgh. So looking at like, are there other inventory programs that we can tie into? Yeah.
So, yeah, so an option there would be to take the inventory we've conducted and then help those property owners make applications to another program. So not even creating our own programs. So I've rewritten the description of this goal to develop a heritage tradition inventory, natural environment historical inventory, and others as identified by this commission. Because that over the next 6 years gives us time to, well, we're done with that. Is there another one we'd like to kind of get an idea of? That sound? Okay.
That just reminded me of a conversation that Rachel and I had a week or two ago when she was very kind to help me with my password issues on my city email. I was asking her if folks have to apply for any kind of a permit to tear down a building. And there isn't necessarily, it doesn't sound like there isn't a permit, you can tear down a building. And I wasn't looking at anything that we could or would want to do that I can envision where we necessarily stop someone, but just to know beforehand so that we could, like, talk about getting cutting or, just taking pictures. And what triggered it, 2 doors down from me, they tore down a house. It was a 1910 house. And was it a really historically significant house? No, not really. Was it a beautiful house? No, not really. But it would have been nice to get some pictures beforehand. And there could be examples where something which is more of a loss, and would be really valuable, I think, to have pictures.
So I'm wondering if Britta's remembering the same example of this that I am, of the stone house on Fulton.
Yeah, I remember that, yes. I'm thinking of, I've seen that house before.
Yeah.
So this is a definite challenge that we run into. So when Friendsview expanded several years ago, there was a beautiful stone home on Fulton Street. And Friendsview tried to give it away. Nobody wanted it. Nobody wanted to move a stone home. As you can imagine, it'd be very challenging. And it wasn't designated as a historic place. And there were lots of other reasons why there was just nothing to be able to stop Friendsview from carrying the stone down. And there was the day that the building started getting torn down, I wouldn't even work here, and I got a call from the mayor from the historical society perspective, asking if there's anything I could do about it. And I said, no, I can't do it because
People to say.
it was years and years, and the house couldn't do anything. But the historical society, we knew it was happening, and so at that time, we did they did walkthrough, we did a historical presentation, we got photos, we gathered information, and we worked with Friendsview to use the stones from that house to create interesting, beautiful things around their property with some interpretive signage. So we found a way to recognize the history without stopping modern progress. And we did that. Britta and I were both on the historical society. I don't know if you were on the board yet at that
Yeah.
point. Were you? Okay, I was like, were you on the board or are you still my student? You just heard about it.
I think there was overlap. It
Okay,
started
there was.
horizontal.
So, we did this as a nonprofit, but that's the kind of thing that we could work towards as a city, is finding ways for the Historic Preservation Commission to help either the historical society be aware of things so that the history places can be preserved. Now, if the building had been on the historic resource inventory, they would have had to come to this commission.
Okay, that was my question. What impact does placing the building on our local resource inventory, what impact does that have on property?
Planning commission will know this better, or planning staff will know better than me, but I can share some. So for demolition, moving or any remodels to the exterior of these historic properties, it would have to come to us.
Okay.
For a review. There are some types of reviews that staff are allowed to review if it's minor enough, but if it gets to a certain point, it would come to us for some type of review.
We've had 2 out of the 3. We've had the remodel and the relocation.
Yeah, so we had the woman building a garage for safety purposes, and we figured out, how to make it work with an historic look of her property. And then there was a building moved from the George Fox campus over here to Second Street. So we've had a couple in this last year.
There's like 2 or 3 levels of historic buildings, right? Do those planning, does that apply to all 3 levels?
No, so the inventory that we have has designated buildings, which they are a designated historic resource. There are supporting inventory buildings, so those are supporting a district that is historic, but then in and of themselves may not be. And then there's potentially historic buildings that are listed that might be, it would take some more exploration. And that's something that the person, the vendor at that time they hired to do the study, created this maybe contributing list. So those ones are not under any sort of restriction. Contributing ones sometimes have minor restrictions to my understanding, but the officially designated historic resources definitely have those restrictions on them. They did require buy-in from the property owners at that time. So, but it was in the 80s. So it was made in the 80s and then redone a little bit in the 90s. So we're 30 years from the last time it's been done. This is why we're asking to update this inventory now. The other thing with that inventory, and I have another question for you on that in a moment, but is what do we want to focus on? Is it important to bring our mid-century modern properties into the inventory? Is it more important to find the things that are moved or changed that aren't on the inventory? So I'll bring that up in a moment. Let's finish this one and we can talk about the grant application.
There's the restroom.
Straight through. Catherine, do you know where it is? I'm gonna show her where it is. Oh, it's straight through these doors and you'll see it just off to the right a tiny bit.
I should ask before, sorry.
That's my oldest daughter,
Okay, that's
yeah.
what I figured, I assumed.
She wanted to see what mom was doing. I was like, come along and you can sit quietly.
Intern.
She's got a few years before she can be student commissioner still, but.
Coming and attending meetings is one of the best.
Okay, I think it's great. My other two were here for the open house on Friday night, pretty much the entire 3 hours, so she wasn't able to come that night, so she wanted to come to me. So that's just.
Yeah, and it holds more true than I wish it did, you know, you hear about kids today can't focus on things, they can't manage their, kids who do this sort of thing. And I, you know, my girls grew up,
It's not all about.
She's just sitting there, not.
we were just talking about you, buddy.
They're talking about how great you are.
We were praising you.
These poor children have been dragged to meetings and museums their whole life,
Yeah.
and antique stores, because that's what mom was into.
Yeah.
So they've been coming to historical society meetings since birth, pretty much, all of my children. Now you haven't come in. Oh, I brought you to one before I worked for the city, because I got a proclamation a couple times.
The mayor at the time was very sweet and always gave me girls stuff.
Oh. Will's always excited to see kids in the building, and the mayor's always sweet when he sees my girls too, so Will's always like, children, can I read them a story?
Oh,
Yes,
that's right.
anytime.
Yeah.
Sorry, I sidetracked.
That's okay. It's our little recess there. I think it's important. Any other thoughts on this plan? Things we want to change, adapt?
Oh, I appreciate you kind of
It's amazing, yeah.
distilling the work we've done over the past year into really.
I tried to keep it simple enough that this is not overwhelming over the next few years, and it's actually achievable. We will have to keep an eye on this. I mean, we're working on replacing clay, but we don't know how long it's going to take at this point. So, you know, staffing's a little lower than we expected it to be this year, but we'll be able to do this.
Do we have someone to fill in for Clay while we don't have someone?
That's what we're working on. I was supposed to meet with Clay's boss today and have a discussion, and we weren't able to meet unfortunately, so hopefully soon we'll have that. Obviously, our city manager, Mr. Worthy, is assigned staff liaisons to these committees. We've done a dual staff liaison of myself and someone from our community development department. Mostly because I've got historic knowledge, because that was just my background and what I've done historically, and so it made sense for me to be involved. But I'm not a planner, so I need them to come in with the planning laws and the planning rules.
Yeah.
They know that a lot better than I do.
It's a good partnership. It just makes sense.
It's a very good partnership. It's always funny, you hear from other cities, wait, the city recorder works with historic preservation, like, well, there's a reason.
It is probably unique in Oregon. Maybe everywhere, yeah. It's not common, it's unique in Oregon to have the city recorder as your staff liaison for historic preservation.
But just so you know, I was the archivist at George Fox for 8 years. Before that, I worked in several other archives. I bachelor's, master's degrees in history, and taught history as well. And then I actually worked for Oregon Heritage at the state with the Main Street program. So I'm very well aware of all those programs. And the last work plan for this commission, 4 of the items on that were projects I did either for the Historical Society's volunteer or in my role at George Fox that were on their work plan. I came into this job and I opened that and I just started laughing. I said, these are all my projects. I didn't even know I was working for the city. So
And so
it
people
was pretty
say,
The
funny.
city's like,
Oh, yeah.
from an outside perspective, it might have seemed like an oddball thing. If you just said to somebody, hey, what do you think about having your
City recorder.
city recorder? But it made sense for Newburgh because that skill set.
Because of my background. And yeah, being on the historical society board here for 10 years, I stopped when I started this job, basically. So,
And I don't want to get too far down the road without Britta, but so have you heard yet kind of what your role will be moving forward with the commission?
with this commission, I think what will remain is that I'll stay on with whoever is coming from planning.
Okay,
So I won't leave entirely, but I do want to make sure they stay involved. They'll take the lead. The goal is that they'll take the lead on more of these grant applications
Yeah.
because they have a larger department than I do.
yeah,
And more staffing to actually do the work when they're written. So there's not an intention for me to be not working with you anymore, it just does it makes sense to be here. But with the planning commission, they take more of a lead role as liaison, I might be more of a support role. And we might just do some project we're working on, honestly.
Yeah.
So I'm not ditching you guys, but we will definitely get a planning commission support in here because we do need that support from the planning commission. So we're planning, staff member, yeah. Alright, anything further on this? If you're willing to, someone make a motion to approve this and bring it to council or something.
we approve this and bring it to your council for approval.
I'll second that.
Right,
with a motion and a second, again, it doesn't seem like there's any need for discussion, so, all in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
thank you guys.
So then evaluation of the certified local government grant application,
Let me pull that up for you guys.
and take your time, take care of those.
Thank you, gotta write down about
Yeah,
these public meeting law things. All right, so this is, let's see, grant application here. Working on all sorts of things. So Clay's been developing our grant application for us. And the biggest thing is, as he wrote it and discussed it with Scott Siegel, who's our community development director, who's supervisor, we're realizing that it has a very broad scope and we need to narrow it down. So the biggest question and I'll walk you through a little bit of the application in a moment here. The biggest question is we'd like to know how we want to limit this or bring this down in some way. So some examples might be limiting it to just the downtown or limiting it to specific neighborhoods that we suspect might have more of a mid-century modern or to other homes that could be added. It could be a focus on updating what we already have or a focus on adding new buildings. We could be trying to define like areas of particular importance and identify properties in there. Or we can really focus in on just the update spaces. So basically it comes down to, are we wanting to clean up what we have? And for example, there are buildings on the current one that are gone, they're no longer there, or they've been moved to a new location. So do we want to clean up and update that, or do we want to focus on adding new properties? Especially the things that have may have just more recently become eligible because it's 30 years later. So the thing that Clay and I keep coming back to is mid-century modern. And the biggest example of that is Romer Homes. So Romer was an architect who became quite famous for his mid-century modern homes, but he started here in Newburgh. So he built the development I live in, actually, here in town. He built a lot of our 50s homes. And then so at first there were the really traditional bungalow, right, that everybody has, but then he started building the ones with central courtyards and lots of light, and so we actually have a few in town. And those might be worth designating.
And his name was Romer?
Rubber, and I've got to remember the first name.
Oh, that's his last name,
Yeah,
okay.
Rubber is the last name. His secretary from when he worked here in Newburgh is still in town
Oh,
and knows some of this information.
Wow.
So we have a resource for this.
just pass away.
He may have.
Because I feel like you mentioned it and I had never heard of this guy.
I'm gonna look
Like the next day I saw obituary.
He may have, I actually haven't looked into that,
Because he wasn't really like a trained architect.
but I think he was a contractor
Yeah,
and then
he's
it
just
kind
a
of.
builder. Kind of saw the market.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's building developments and then doing more.
I'd like to propose that we broaden the scope instead of narrow the scope.
Okay.
So, here's why I'm saying that. I think, yeah, we should clean up the existing inventory. But I think we need to define what we want to evaluate as historic within the inventory. And it makes sense that because of this person, that's a story that we want to preserve. And so adding the mid-century moderns, especially somebody like him having developed so many of them, makes a lot of sense. But I think we should be forward-looking in that there are some other homes or buildings that may warrant different evaluation. I think just looking at the dates and saying, okay, was it 75 years? I forget.
I think it's 75 years, Rachel.
I think it's 50.
It depends, it's not necessarily just here.
Okay.
Because it can depend on what has occurred at this location. If they have a list of specific criteria at the state level that they evaluate, and it can be based on age, but it can also just be based on people who lived there, what occurred in that location, what businesses were there. If there's enough of an import, it can be an earlier date.
I'd like to play with a rubric that takes a matrix of those criteria and ascribes a point system to it. And that way, if we're not sure, but there's, a really good story to it and it is important in some other way, even though it doesn't meet the 75-year criteria or 50, whatever it is, then the commission can make some decisions objectively.
I think it'd be helpful to have a year criteria, like an age criteria that the house is not eligible until it's X many years old, unless there's no historical significance like the architect or something like that. Just because that helps narrow. I agree with you that we should be adding more homes and bringing up to speed some of those more recent builds, but I think we've got to delineate it somewhere just for the scope of this program.
So would you suggest the 50-year?
I almost suggest 75. That was 50 years ago. It's really got into that. That puts us only in the
1970s.
Yeah, which,
Yeah.
I don't know, I'd say anything like prior to 1970, I don't know.
Well,
There's a really cool
75 years ago, that is mid-century.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Spot on mid-century.
Right.
Yeah.
So 1950 on.
I'm trying to think how to narrow for, feasibility, making the grant.
Yeah.
But also, what you were saying, Deb, one of the things that I keep coming back to is, I still feel like what we do, let alone general community, when we talk about historic preservation, we think about First Street. And we think about this little stretch right here. And those homes that you're talking about, that's not in the conversation of history. The neighborhood just to the south here, some of it is, that's my neighborhood, but also just as objectively as I can be, I see that's where tear downs are starting to happen, and that's where there's a lot of pressure and stuff's gonna get lost.
Right.
There's some really old homes over there. I also live over there, and there's some really old homes.
Yeah.
Well, I look at, there's my house, which isn't historic, it's 1985. But right next to it, he tore down 1902 to build a new house. And then it's an LLC, but I think it's the same owner, tore down in 1910 to build something new. So that pressure is on, that part of town is, I know we don't have a major Airbnb problem in town like a lot of communities do, but the Airbnb pressure that we have is focused in that neighborhood. A lot of the development pressures are pushing on that neighborhood.
And just historic home isn't necessarily a hindrance to that. I think Airbnbs can complement.
Oh, yeah,
it,
it's not
which is really, really well, which is a cool, I think that's just a selling point for the community.
My point just being, there's a lot of
But the
moving things in
There's
it.
a lot of activity.
What seems like you just walk down the street, it's just like, oh, this is a very settled neighborhood, beautiful old houses.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of things that are pressing to change that.
Can can we create the story and then do the narrative of, you know what I'm saying? Or like Newburgh has, developed and tripled its initial population from 1950 to 1975. And I don't know, I'm just trying to find a way to narrow this, but I think we need to include all the city of Newburgh.
I think so too, because there's, I mean, this is very Limerick, but talking about the downtown core and the neighborhoods we're in south of downtown, you can see how the town developed just based on the extent of architecture. Like, that is so cool to walk down one street and see a home from 1890, and then see one from 1910, and then from 1950 and 1980. And you see how the whole town grew because of the buildings that are there. And again, all the things that get free up, we don't want to stop people from doing what they want with the property, but those stories need to be preserved, and the inventory will help us. And there's so many other neighborhoods, your neighborhood, over by that high school, there's a cool little like 1960s, 70s homes that are so cool, and they're starting to sell. I've seen 2 at least sell in the last year, and I mean, I love them. I would keep them the same, but a lot of new buyers are gonna go in and change them. And at the very least, we should have the stories.
Go a little-
Yeah, the whole city.
A little further, and that kind of Aquarius, in that neighborhood,
Mhm.
split levels, which you don't see much in Oregon at all, and I grew up in a split level, and I don't know why people don't like me more than they do, they're such a great space for a family, but yeah, so yeah, which kind of loops me back to how do we make this feasible, and how do we give direction to staff what to do with this grant, because we just told them to do.
So here's
Massive.
some ideas. So what I'm hearing is we really feel it's necessary to update what we have in our inventory and what's there. That might be something that could be done more by, started at least by this group, taking that inventory, going and checking to see if that home is still in that location, has it been changed? And then documenting that. That would be a starting point there. So we need to think about what do we want to hire an expert to do, and what could we do with volunteers potentially? Or do we split this up a little bit more, and instead of doing, we can think about another grant in the future. We start off by doing part of this, and then we get another grant to do a little bit more in the future. That's another thing we can consider. But for the purposes of the grant we need to spend at the end of this month, we're gonna need to narrow it down just so that we have small enough scope to give to the contractor, because otherwise, nobody's gonna take this for
Well,
$16 yet.
Just that, could we narrow it and say this group is gonna volunteer time to at least reconcile the existing inventory with the buildings that are still here, so take that out of the grant? I mean, that's a pretty straightforward.
Ballpark, how many properties are currently?
Let me pull up the inventory for us, and we can take a look at that.
And then we could have the grant just be to expanding to greater Newburgh.
Because unless it's some shocking number, it feels realistic for us to divvy up the historic properties and go by and just verify they're still there or any significant changes.
So welcome to our new website, by the way, isn't it beautiful? So the historic inventory, where did it go? There's all sorts of great history here. Inventories right here. So this is the last update in 1990. And I'm trying to remember, it said how many resources were in here. 193 properties.
Well, we can manage that.
109 divided by 6 feels, I can't do math in my head, but
Let's see, that's just over 30.
I was gonna say it's like 30 some houses. And I mean, what a great introduction to the
Yes.
town and the history, and there's so, I've been here 18 years, there's a lot to learn, so it'd be good for me too, I'd enjoy it.
So then the idea would be that the commissioners would do the work to reconcile the inventory with what's there. And then we would use the contractor that we hired to do more of the bringing new properties in. And potentially, if we have some of that reconciliation done ahead of time, they might be able to update some of the information for us in our formal inventory, once we've done the reconciliation. But I think their focus would be the mid-century modern and finding homes and properties outside of the main downtown corridor to focus on. So that So what we probably add to that is a preliminary GIS, a geographic information system search, which is a mapping system that we have. We have 2 staff members who do that. So they would build kind of a basic search of the neighborhoods that might be hotspots for this research.
Can we focus it, or should we even try to focus even further and direct contractors who look for like notable architects and how they would do that research, but would that be a focus or specific architectural styles like split level or mid-century models? That was pretty defined architectural styles.
Might be able to.
Focus it to that. I just don't know, not knowing the price and how much a contractor like this is going to cost.
Yeah,
What's gonna be the most effective ask?
let me show you.
We could narrow it really down.
This is the current budgetary breakdown. So what we have, and it looks really big because it shows you 23,000. Now this has our in-kind work on that as well.
Okay.
Which includes some staff time and some of your time as volunteers. What the grant is up to $16,000. So that's what we can get from the grant. So, and we hope we get it all 16, but yeah, here, Clay has added the GIS evaluation, mid-century modern construction in here. We're getting some updated numbers here for staff hours and things like that right now. But this idea is evaluation of the current inventory, but if we're taking some of these out, it's going to change it. Evaluation of the current forms that are in there, that's each page that documents each home, and if those need to be updated. Now, this might be that we say, we're not gonna have them evaluate the current inventory because we're going to do that reconciliation, and we'll point them to the specific forms, so that lowers the number of hours. We're anticipating their rate is going to be about $150 an hour. That's what we anticipate based on the rates we got the last time we tried to do this a few years ago. So Karen, for background knowledge, we tried to do a similar project a few years ago, and we ended up ending it because there wasn't enough community buy-in at that point. And so we needed to pause, make sure we did it the right way.
Could you, since we're gonna take on reconciling the existing,
Mhm.
can you use that $150 an hour rate for our in-kind?
So for
Volunteering.
volunteer
Just thinking
in kind,
of how you can leverage, because that's gonna be more time than we've been putting in, and anything you can do to
Yeah.
leverage that.
so what we have to do is either be able to prove a professional rate for one of you based on your careers, which actually might be easy with Britta.
Maybe, yeah.
Or we have to stick reconcile around minimum wage. So for federal and state grant matches,
Okay,
the impact can be harder. Now, this one doesn't require a full match, so it makes it a little bit easier. So we can look into how we can do that. I'll talk to our grant writer and see.
I'm just thinking there's an opportunity there for more in-kind donation.
Yeah.
If you need us to log how much time, whatever you need us to do, that would be helpful
Perfect.
to verify.
Well, and especially if you guys are going to do that reconciliation, that would be a significant amount of time.
Yeah,
So even if it's still only at a 25 or whatever rate we have it at,
Yeah.
it's still significant in time.
that's my thought,
Yeah.
yeah, this is gonna be
So that will change
quite a
quite a
bit
bit.
more than we have been.
Yeah, which is significant, which is
Yeah,
great.
it's just stronger application.
So I think that Clay and I could be able to go through some of this detail. So he detailed out like specific tasks and how long they should take and how much we're budgeting for them. But if we're taking it out and making it focus more on this mid-century modern or whatever style you specify, or even mid-century modern or outlying areas, if you want to just say certain neighborhoods we want to focus on, that might be a way of doing it as well. So we can think about that. But we can update this to be a little bit more spot on. This is the budgetary form for the grant application.
Well, the GIS identifies the neighborhoods that have homes that are 75 years old or more, then that will be helpful to put in here, and then we can really focus on that.
So let's see, can anyone put into words what focus you guys would like to see? I've thrown out a few things, but I need to hear from you guys. What's your goal?
I think the mid-century modern is a good anchor for the consultant. Gives them kind of a more defined needle for the haystack.
So I need to ask some questions. Are most of the historical, so older than 75, non-mid-century, are they all already pretty much identified in the existing inventory?
The existing inventory really focuses on downtown, right, isn't it?
So the
It shows
existing
the boundaries
inventory
of the
is the downtown cultural corridor and then the Nob Hill area,
Which is.
which is
Like
over, it's
north of
Sheridan
Fox.
and Sherman streets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have
Northwest.
no problem with mid-century, definition. I'm just concerned that maybe there's a chunk that's being left behind.
Yeah.
That's the only reason why I'm asking. I just don't know.
How about update the existing inventory based upon the GIS survey of the city of Newburgh neighborhoods where properties are 75 years old or more?
Updating it with a focus on properties that are 75 years older or older. Kind of just dive on me. So recently eligible or
Existing inventory based on
GIS survey.
of the city of Newburgh's properties that are 75.
Neighborhoods with a high concentration.
Correct, yeah.
Okay,
Because that would give us a look at the whole city of.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm more comfortable with that, and I'm just putting the mid-century.
If they pulled up everything before, if they pulled up everything 75 years or older, drop out what's already on the current list, that gives them, then they kind of have almost like a heat map of where historic properties are.
okay. So we can use that. So the idea is do a GIS inventory to figure out neighborhoods that have buildings that are 75 years or older. Drop those with anything that's currently covered already. And then focus on what's remaining and see what they can do. What they can accomplish within the confines of the amount we have. And then one thing we'll keep in mind is if we feel that it's not completed, we look for another grant, something like that to complete this inventory. I think that's a pretty good scope for us. And then you guys get to have a lot of fun. Starting with,
Definitely.
it sounds like at our next meeting, it might be beneficial to look at what our rubric is for.
Yes, that'd be great.
Okay. Okay, so would anyone like to make a motion to that point for the focus of the, or I'm asking the chair to call for a motion. There we go.
No, any motion
I would make that motion, I don't know the proper verbiage to put there, but.
as presented?
Yes, I would move to focus the scope of our grant project as presented.
I'll second it.
So,
All right, you gotta call for the vote.
Motion second, all in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
That's great.
I will do as much as I can, but I've taken on enough projects and now I'm working 2 part-time jobs that it's making it hard for me to
Oh,
have
yeah.
free time for hobbies.
Schoolwork.
Yeah, and schoolwork, as we're getting towards.
That's actually a good, so what sort of a deadline do we want to put on ourselves for doing this? And
So one thing on that would be that the deadlines for the grant, see so I said I'd go over this really quickly. Basically, it is a focus to historic research inventory and survey form update. The state grants always ask for latitude and longitude, which cracks me up. That's the granting area. Let's see if we have the timeline here.
I wonder if that's because SHPO was part of that.
Yeah. Well, SHPO's part of Parks and Rec.
It used to be ODOT.
And ODOT consults with them.
Yeah, it just seems like a very ODOT.
It's a real, it does, it's very, well, part of it is they need to prove that they are supporting work throughout the whole state. So getting these, it's just funny to me. Oh yeah, here, project start date. The idea that Clay had is that we would actually start the inventory in September and they would wrap it up by the end of December. So theoretically, you guys could use this year to be working on it as well. you'd probably wanna have your reconciliation done or close to done about the time the consultant starts work.
So this would have the consultant begin work September
September.
25. So if we finished in August, that gives us a fair amount of time.
Before the old fashioned festival, we need to finish for you.
Well, the old fashioned is in July, so it's not.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, I think you're gonna be really, really busy, so.
So we plan on our meeting, our summer meeting, we would want to be looking at all that data together.
So that would be the next meeting or the meeting after that?
That would be the meeting after that, I believe we have one
To be.
May and then
Yes,
When are we meeting?
August. I think it's May and August, but let me look it up, I
I
can
think we
get our
need a
dates.
couple more working meetings.
I agree, because we talked about that when I started on the commission, we were meeting just quarterly, so 4 times a year.
Yeah.
We talked about having that, so.
So that's just something I'm gonna need a motion to, if you wanted
I
to
move
know.
that we add 2 more working meetings. And potentially subcommittee work based on the needs of completing, the inventory project.
I'll second that.
Okay, let me get this.
so then our discussion will be, we take a vote, so we want to add 2 more meetings.
2 more meetings throughout the year.
Throughout the year,
Not,
so-
not 2 more meetings before September. Yeah, just
But, yeah,
clarification.
maybe like one, so our next scheduled meeting is May, is that correct?
I can go look at
Yeah,
the
let's.
exact date there, let me pull that up here.
Because 2 makes sense if we had one meeting before the May meeting and then one before the August.
That's what I'm thinking,
Yeah,
yeah.
I just want to confirm.
It's-
We're talking.
Well, and that's all I was asking.
Yes,
Yeah.
2 meetings before the consultant starts.
All right.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
And pause, and, well, I'm sorry, but give me grace as I learn
No,
a new
take time,
website too
take
here. Oh, come on, behave yourself calendar, there we go. It is so much better than you guys, you can subscribe to this calendar too and download it,
Oh,
so
yes.
that will make your life easier. So go ahead and start presentation there, and then let me go look, I believe it's May, where is it? Oh, yeah, there it is.
May 20th.
May 20th is the current next meeting.
So I'm gonna be gone, out of the country for basically the first 3 weeks of April,
Okay.
just
Yeah, in April.
Japan.
So one thing we can do on this, if you want to approve adding 2 more meetings, I can send out some surveys so we can go out and Okay.
So May 20th, and then the next scheduled meeting after that is when?
August, end of August.
So I think we would have to be late June or early July.
Yeah.
But
Okay. So motion and second, we've got a plan of,
A motion a second, but I just want to clarify,
Yep.
for 2 additional meetings before September
Correct.
of 2025.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
and it's a good reminder just to kind of process it. So often you think you have a motion and a second, and that's when it's time to vote. But really, the way it works, you get a motion and a second, and then you have your discussion,
Right.
and then you take your vote. So it's a good reminder. No, we're,
You're doing it the right way.
you're doing it the right way. I'm just reminding myself out loud, like, that's the actual process. So that's a good discussion. So I think we're ready, and I'll call for the vote. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Okay.
I'd like to add one more recommendation, and that is to facilitate the start of the process. And I'm just speaking of my own ignorance here, I don't know how to do an inventory, so I am wondering if we can designate a specialist lead person. Oh, look, I'm pointing at Rhoda, sorry. To kind of help facilitate because, yeah, I don't know.
Sounds like we really need, we need a project plan. So I'm trying to think of what, I work with myself either. But I think that having, let's see, if we're planning an extra meeting soon, at that point, we might be able to like have our plan and divvy it up.
Is the historic inventory that's available online?
Yeah.
It's available on our website, so let's see, I had it.
I haven't looked at it yet. Kind of what I was envisioning was before our next meeting, before that work meeting, I'll just go through that inventory and just assign, unless somebody, I'll just assign, X amount, the first 30.
I'll familiarize
So-
you.
And then we could look through there and any questions folks have about properties.
Yeah, my thought was, let's develop a rubric first before we go out and do inventory. So, yeah, this is great,
Yeah.
but I will happy to work with you. And
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that.
so, maybe we can just chat for,
Yeah.
half hour sometime.
Yeah.
I-
You can,
So then
yeah,
I'll give you guys, so you two are gonna work on that, that's great, I'll just give you a reminder that you shouldn't talk to anyone else on this group about it outside of a meeting, because you don't wanna create a serial meeting.
Right, so, and that was gonna be my question, are we under quorum with two?
With two, we're under.
Okay,
3 is quorum, right?
okay, that was the question I had, all right.
So usually you have to check, so 3 is your quorum, so with 2, you can sit down, you two, or with you 3 to work on that, and so these two can develop a rubric if you
Yeah.
wanna assign. Just familiarize yourself with this list, I could go through. So the actual inventory that was conducted in 1985 starts all the way down here. But it goes in alphabetical order by street name. It's just strange.
Well, it makes it easy for a
It does,
reconciling.
and this is just a
Then you
brief
can just
history of
every kind of street.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm trying to figure out where
That
this
that was
is.
my concern is that, are we gonna be crisscrossing all over town, but yeah, if it's set up that way, then.
You just take a street and go, I'm scrolling through, you might have a good time reading all the information on here. The actual inventory starts.
Do you know, because the actual inventory starts later, but there's that list that was done in the 90s that's just a list of them. Is that a complete list or are there differences between the two?
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure.
That list.
Maybe that can be part of our work.
Yep, that can be, that is showing concentration areas and it might be a complete list. So here's where they start. So for each home or each location, it's not necessarily home, so there's the sawmill site at Ewing Young Park is on our inventory, though we can't really verify this site, so. It starts with, here's the appendix here, so you could break it up by this appendix here. So like I said, it has, the home, and then it says contributing, or P, I believe, is potential, or and S is supporting. So you'd be able to go through and assign these homes by address, or these addresses to people. Oh, there it is, primary, secondary, and compatible. So primary is the one that is definitely designated. Secondary resources usually supporting the area as a historic area, and compatible is like it also is kind of just supporting the area. The secondary ones are potentially could be designated pretty easily, to my understanding, but if you go through this explains that in detail.
So then I'm kind of picturing then, I'll just come up, I'll divide these properties among us. 2 of you will work on rubric. I would say once you're done with that, let Rachel know, and then she can schedule a meeting.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to schedule a meeting before you're done, so as soon as you're done, then we can schedule a meeting.
Do you have my phone number?
I don't.
This is exciting, you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love this.
Feel free to reach out to me about the rubric. I'm happy to give thoughts and to give you ideas and resources for how to create that. Because I would highly suggest working off of the State Historic Preservation Office's rubric and some of the reasons, the criteria they list, because in our criteria, which is there, it's going to be a lot easier for places to be listed, not just here, but the state and national levels. So, yeah. Other than that, so we focused the grant down. Are you, on need approval of this organization to submit that grant, or this commission to submit that grant? So, council has approved it already, but want to also, it'd be good to document that this commissions and full support of the grant that Clay and I are about to submit for you. So,
So moved.
okay.
I'll second it.
Okay, approval of grant. As edited or?
Yep.
Okay,
There's a motion and a second then. We're on discussion of, did you have some,
No discussion for
Okay.
me.
raise your hand and say aye.
we usually don't have so many motions on the night.
Yes.
Trying to get some stuff done. All right, well, those are my two continued business items for you guys.
Excellent. Do we have, without Clay, updates from planning staff?
So the main updates are that Clay's leaving, as you guys have heard. And we are working on bringing another person in from planning to assist. See, I wrote down more things we met earlier that I was gonna make sure to mention to you guys. One thing also, that he recommended looking at is we can look at what is already registered on the national registry that's not registered locally, and that's a really good quick reconciliation we can do.
Yeah.
So I can be part of your reconciliation, if you'd like to. I've seen Excel spreadsheets, it's getting exciting. You know, I'm telling Excel spreadsheets.
I'm very excited. I have people asking me some questions, actually, just casual questions about what the inventory is and what it means, and if there's confusion over it, so this is a truly needed community resource.
Yep,
Yeah.
it's really exciting. Yep, that's all I have from staff.
Excellent. Any items from commissioners? Two things I was thinking of. One, and I don't mean this directed at Chuck, it just made me think of it. Is there an attendance policy for committees? If not with Chuck, but we had another person who attendance became an issue, just so that there's
Yes.
consistency on how folks.
Oh, yeah. So, attendance policy, if there are more than 2 unexcused absences in a row,
Okay,
you guys can request that council dismiss someone from positions. So that is something to do, and that's actually the mayor who makes the decision.
Okay.
Council ratifies it. If someone were to break all the council rules and things like that too, you have some flexibility as well. On that note, we are currently updating the council rules, which is something, it's been a fun project I've been working on. And those will, because the committee rules are like a mirror image of the council rules, we're going to wrap those updates together. So there will be a new set of committee rules coming out. A lot of them it's simplified. We're trying to simplify down from the old rules. One of the recommendations that's been made is we move to Robert's Rules of Order for small boards instead of full Robert's Rules of Order, which is just a simpler version. I literally have a 1.5-page summary that includes basically how to do it. It makes it a lot easier to follow. And it's basically what we do already, but it looks like this formal. So just to let you know, that is coming. And I also forgot I was gonna mention that the City Council just updated their goals, and several of the goals are applicable to this committee. Do you wanna talk about that a little bit? I can pull them up. Yeah, let me grab the here where I have them. Actually,
While you're grabbing stuff,
stop sharing for a second.
are we missing people then?
Chuck,
Yes,
Chuck
Chuck.
and.
yeah, he couldn't make it tonight because his grandkids, so.
I wasn't sure because I knew there was changes in the board at the
Yeah.
end of the year, so I wasn't sure who was.
There had been, it wasn't really, well, I guess Chuck made me think of it not being here, but it was, we had a previous member who we never even saw, she was appointed and then
Yeah,
wasn't able to attend meetings, you weren't able to reach her. That's really what I was thinking of when I was asking what the policy was. I don't see it becoming an issue, but just,
Sorry, Will just emailed it me. I figured that's the fastest way to pull these up for you guys. Yes, with that commissioner, she had been sick and had to, but she didn't formally resign and we were, it was a bit of a struggle. Okay, here are the new council rules, and you haven't seen them in the pretty format yet, Robin. We just got the graphic design done.
Okay.
So these are the recently approved council rules. So some of these are not relevant, but
No, we're working with the downtown coalition, that's
Mm-hmm.
part of it.
that's a big one in here, which is, let's see, this in here.
Yeah, revitalize the unified.
So this has, both of these objectives are directly related to the work that we're working on right now. So this, yeah, and goal 7,
Yeah.
so basically this is directly related to us, and when we had our goal setting meeting, I kept saying, yeah, the Historic Preservation Commission's working on it. So,
That's really wonderful, because if you remember last year, gave you the feedback that there weren't any aspirational goals. It was all very concrete.
Yes, I told, yes,
And-
and Will came up with it,
No, that's
yes.
wonderful.
He's like, we should use some aspiration, I'm like, yes, that's
Yes.
exactly right.
Some things to strive.
and
Yes.
the neat
That's
thing,
wonderful.
if you look at this, we have these specific and concrete goals that we'll accomplish.
Yeah.
But also these continuous goals that are, things that we will always be doing, they're not going to be done ever. So we made sure to codify both of those in council goals. But this is the exciting thing right here, is these 2 goals are directly related to the work of this commission. And the work plan we've been working on, so if when we bring these to council, it'll be in March, and I will let you know the date that we're
Yes.
potentially bringing that. Robin, as the counselor who's the liaison to this commission, it would be good for you to be involved with that presentation, even if it's just us sponsored. And then Bob and I can work on that, but we'll make sure to show how all the work plan ties into these goals very quickly.
Have these goals have been approved? These are official, okay.
Yes, these were just passed.
And are those available now on the website too? or-
They will be if they're not up, we just, like the graphic design, I think finished this morning, so this is fresh.
Yeah, no, I know, it's all, in.
They are
transition,
on the recent council agenda, but this version will be up on the website very shortly, if it's not already. So that's what I know.
I had one other question, and it might be too soon and kind of too removed to really have much of an answer, but with changes in priorities and funding at the federal level, any sense on how that's going to impact historic preservation funding?
I've read a little, but don't really know yet. So definitely some of the grant funding out there is gone or changed dramatically. But a lot of the grants, the CLG grants that we're looking at are state lottery winners, so it's not a federal program. But yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on that and monitor it closely. I know it's affecting a lot of national programs and like NEH grants right now.
Well, that kind of makes sense. It might be a little bit too early to know, the Park Service and, historic preservation isn't right now one of the focal points, but likely will be at some point. And just,
Yeah.
keeping an eye on what that impact will be.
Have any age grants specifically been, I was on the website yesterday, and they didn't have any information right now. And the National Endowment for the Arts has like totally restructured.
All I have seen is new criteria added
Okay,
that basically talks about what things will not be approved
okay.
or will be approved, like what focuses are and are not acceptable for the grant programs. That's all I have seen so far, and that was just a casual browsing. I have not done a deep dive or much research into this yet. As I know more, I'm happy to share it, but at this point, we're not sure where things are going with some of these grant programs with a lot of the federal funding changes. So luckily, a lot of the things we're doing for are state dollars, so it's not as effective, but we'll see what happens over the next few years. Great.
Anything else, what's my hand for the good of the order?
I just want to say for the next meetings that come up, the ones that are added, I have a lot going on this spring and summer that's been added to my calendar. So who knows how much I'll actually be here, and I want to say that before, just so that you know, I'm not purposely.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
will you let us know if you know that you're there?
Yes, I will, yes.
Yeah, just, with me, because I wouldn't want you to, I certainly wouldn't want to implement our attendance policy.
Yeah.
But, it's unexcused absence. If
Yes.
there's something that comes up, you can just email me.
Yeah.
Then make sure that Rachel.
Yes, I will.
He's really good about letting me know.
Yeah.
So,
In December, something came up like 2 hours before the meeting and I had a ride. And then it was a close friend had an issue and it's like, I was like, I'm not gonna be able to deal with this and the meeting tonight, so I was like, I'm just gonna skip the meeting.
and keep in mind that attendance by Zoom is always an option if it's an option for you, so that's totally acceptable.
I think as other community updates go, the Newburgh Area Historical Society is moving along, but our plan is to start a historical book club soon, so I don't know if we'll be sharing that through our newsletter. So I'm meeting with one of our other board members to kind of build some framework for that tomorrow, hopefully, so more information about that is coming. And then just a professional, just for my work, I manage a nonprofit that's looking to establish a national heritage area, which is like a whole up in the air process because of the new administration and everything. But that's something that we would love historic preservation commissions in general to support. So I don't want to like do any conflict of interest or things, I obviously use myself in that. But know that that's something that's in the works, and we'd love to get Newburgh heritage recognized on a national, not just Newburgh, but
Yeah.
largely Williamson Valley, not really cool program. So we'll get to the national heritage area. Have some free time and want to do something historic. Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you all. This has been a productive meeting. With that, I will adjourn.